Hello, welcome back to another live. My name is Laken, and I go live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern to chat about goals and life and a topic and update you on my goals and all kinds of things. I am kicking this off with I'm already debating switching the background back. I love the view of this background, but the lighting just is not as good as when I'm actually facing the window and not backlit. When I do it the other way, the background is not as cute. Like this background is cuter, but the lighting is worse. And I have a ring light. I have a specialized blue light to make it not so yellow. Like I feel like I've tried a bunch of stuff and the lighting's just not as good. And I feel like that's more important than the background being cute. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Do you feel like better lighting, less cute background, or worse lighting, cuter background? Love your thoughts. Unfortunately, there's not a setup for me in this office right now where I can have both. So that is what we're working with. All right, let's start with our first question that we always start with, which is what is one small win that you have to share from the last week? If you're here live, please say hello in the chat and let us know what your win is. And if you are watching the replay, hello, thank you for watching the replay and prioritizing this time for yourself, whether you're doing something and using this as background noise. I try to do a good job of repeating the questions so that you can just listen. You don't actually have to stare at my face, so maybe you don't care about the lighting in the background. But share your win with us in the comments. While I wait for those to come in, my win has been focusing on what I can do versus what I can't. I haven't been feeling 100%. My energy levels have been kind of low. And so I've been hard on myself and a lot of like, I can't. And yesterday I was finally like, what can you do? What can you focus on? So that has been my one thing. Went over spending plan with your husband. I love that. Getting back to it. Summer is hard for routines. Absolutely. Hello, welcome. I want to hear about all of your wins. Y'all know that they don't have to be big wins, small progress, still progress. And coffee is still delicious, especially iced coffee. My orchid is beautiful. Thank you. My husband got that for me for Mother's Day. A handful of them have already fallen off, which I know y'all have told me again and again that it's okay that they fall off. Like that happens, but it does make me sad because it used to have, I don't know how many flowers, but a handful of them have fallen off. After weeks of eating out way too much, we went and got a full batch of groceries again last night. That is an awesome win, but I'm also going to be the person that reminds you that like eating out in that first trimester is like that happens, right? Small win. I haven't been logging my daily steps on my goal sheet, but I realize I've been doing them anyway. So I think I will take them off for August. I love that, Jamie. There is always a time where you feel like I don't need to track it anymore and I could take it off and still work on it. Sometimes you just have to try and sometimes you have to add it back on. Sometimes you don't. And we all go through phases. We actually talked about that on the live last night a little bit, or the coaching call last night. Working with a nutritionist. I love that for you. Okay, let's move in to my reading or my goals updates, starting with my reading update. I haven't made any reading progress in the last week. None. I have not read a book, any part of any of the books. I have 3 books I'm currently working on. I've read 0% of all of them in the last 7 days. We're going to blame the Olympics and that I haven't been feeling 100%. And I literally have just either been watching the Olympics or like zoning out in the background. I haven't made any progress. So just FYI, that's it. There are going to be weeks like that. You're going to have weeks that your progress is literally nothing. And it doesn't mean that I'm giving up on my reading goal for the rest of the year. It just means that this week I didn't make any progress. So I'm not going to pop up my books. If you're curious what books I'm reading, I will link them in the description box. And I popped them up on last week's live and probably this week too. But this week I'm just not even going to deal with it. Oh, I love this. I finally finished decluttering and deep clean of your son's room before returning from maternity leave. You've got this. Don't feel bad. I haven't read either. Some weeks are just like that. And you know, it might, I know I put let's blame the Olympics because I do think that's a part of it. Like during all my extra, if I have any downtime or I have something on in the background instead of an audiobook, it's the Olympics. And so it might be like that for the next, 10 days until the Olympics are over. And that is what it is. Of course, as soon as the Olympics end, it's football season. Just me? I'm really excited. Okay, let's move into my monthly goal check-in. Now, this is that weird in-between week where, so I started this. Did I start this at the beginning of the year, y'all? Or was it may have been some time in the middle of the year where I started sharing my goal progress every single week. And I pop up a picture of my goal sheet from that day. Like I take the picture in the morning and I pop it up. But we have this weird in-between week every month where it's the goals video is not up, but I have started on my new goals. So here's the snapshot of my July goal sheet. I did take it this morning, but it ended on Sunday. Like I have moved on to my August sheet, but I'm not going to pop that up until the video where I talk about it goes live, which is going live on Monday. So here's the wrap up of how July looked. Obviously, I will deep dive into all of this in that goals video going live on Monday. All in all, July was a pretty good month, and all in all, August is going to look very, very similar. However, yesterday, I was on a walk yesterday, and I was like, my brain was just kind of exploding with like this thing I need to do and that thing I need to do, and how I feel like I'm not drinking enough water and like all these things. And so if we're being totally honest, I kind of just want to blow up my goals. Like I almost like came home and just like was like, I'm just going to redo it. And we're going to start August with like a whole fresh new set of goals. And that's silly. I may still do it. I may still rewrite my August goals. We'll see. I mean, that goals video is going to go live Monday. It's filmed and done regardless of what I decide to do. And if I do decide to change it, I'll talk about it on next week's live. But I just wanted to, first off, tell you that like, if you ever get this kind of feeling, you're not alone. Like it happens. Second off, I'm just a person like you working on my own goals. Just because I talk about it and I share tips and suggestions and ideas and things that I've learned and things that I know that work doesn't mean I always do them, or doesn't mean that I don't ever get these feelings where I just want to blow up my goals too. So that's part of it. And then I also wanted to maybe talk about it because I sometimes will get ideas when I start talking about things. That's how I process. Like I process by talking, and it happens a lot in videos and on lives. And so part of me is like, okay, if I start talking about this, will it come to me? What the answer is? Like, is the answer that, because one of the answers that I came up with while I was actually working on these little pop-ups here this morning is that it's just one part of how I spend my time. So I could leave my August goals on my goal sheet just as they are, and then also focus on my water and also do some other things that I know need to happen. But if they're not on my goal sheet, am I going to prioritize them as much? The answer to that is frankly no, because I don't. Yeah. I don't know. The answer is not coming to me while I'm talking. And so we'll see what I end up deciding to do and how I feel about it. I just know that like all the things on my August goal sheet, I do want to do and I do want to prioritize, but there's other things that I also know I need to do and prioritize. So anyway, those are my thoughts. That's where my brain is at and where my goals are. All right, last thing before we jump into the topic. I know there's a lot of you that are very excited about the topic this week. The August calendar. This is the last day of July. So the August calendar is up and ready to go. It is beautiful and simple. We don't have any think thrown wrenches in our August. Like Monday is a YouTube video, Tuesday is the coaching call, and Wednesday is the live. Nothing is going to change about that. Everything looks beautiful and perfect, and that is what August looks like, which is good. I can promise you the rest of the year is not going to be quite so beautiful and perfect. Okay, let's jump into the topic of the week. So this month has been all about routines. We started with how routines impact your goals. That's week 1. If you want to go back and watch that, we talked about designing your ideal routine. That was week 2. And then last week, we talked about the best strategy for implementing your routine. That was week 3. But what about when life gets in the way, which we touched on a smidge last week because somebody asked about it, but this has always been the plan for the week 4 topic. I'm going to start by telling you that your routine is not going to be perfect every single time you do it. And you will not do it every day, week, month, whatever the routine is set up. You will not. The end. Like that is just a fact. There is like life is too unpredictable for me to sit here and tell you that your routine, you can work to a place where it will be the same exact routine every day for however long you want to do it. But the good news is that you don't need to. That is not the purpose. If you go back to week 2, when we talked about designing our routines, we talked a lot about the why. What is the purpose of that routine for you? And we all, even if we all have morning routines, we all have different reasons why that morning routine is important. For some people, it might be to have my day start on a calm foot before I get to the chaos that is work. For some people, it might be making sure that I don't forget to do these really important things that I have to do in the morning, or I'm going to forget to do them. Maybe it's leaning into the energy that you have in the morning. That's my typical reason, is getting things done while I have the most energy. Maybe you're not a morning person and you're like, I want to do the bare minimum to get my day started on the right foot. All of those whys do not need perfection. And they do not need to necessarily be done every single day in order for you to benefit from them. So if we're talking about daily routines, which is typically what we lean into when we're talking about routines, but there are other ones as well, weekly, monthly, etc. You're going to miss days. Period, the end. Like you are going to miss days, and that is okay. So what I would encourage you to do, 2 suggestions, 2 things to think about when you are struggling with missing days when it comes to your routine. Number 1 is set a goal to hit some percentage of days that is lower than 100. Maybe you have a goal that you're trying to do every day, Monday through Friday. So you set a goal to do it 4 out of the 5 days, 80% of the time. Maybe you have a goal that you're trying to do every day, 7 days out of the week. And so you set a goal to do it 5 out of the 7 days. You know that there's probably going to be 2 nights that you don't do it. That's typically my goal for my evening routine. Like if there's 2 nights that I don't do it, that's okay. Like that's what happens. But also, I just realized there's a typo here. Sorry, y'all. Clearly was in a rush this morning when I was making these pop-ups. If you are numerically driven, actually set a goal. Let's say my goal is to hit it. However, I would encourage you to work towards that mentality of just that you're going to miss days, and that's going to happen. And then what I would encourage you to do is just try not to miss 2 in a row. I forget what book or podcast or person I heard talk about this, but it was like, don't miss 2 in a row. Like if you miss 2, that puts you more on the like downslope of it's a lot easier to skip that 3rd day than if you miss 1, you miss 1, and then you get back on it and you do the routine the next day and you do the routine the next day. One way to get better about this, missing 1 day, is knowing that you will skip steps, especially if you are one of these people who creates an incredibly robust routine that has a bunch of steps. You are going to skip some. That is also okay. The routine still counts. It still counts that you did the routine, even if you don't do all of the steps. So even if your routine is 10 steps long, if you do 1 step, it still counts in my book. Now, I don't want you to sit there and be like, but that, in my experience, working on routines, the mentality, these mentality around your routines is what helps me continue to do them. If I had the mentality that I have to do all the steps or it doesn't count, or I have to do it every single day or it's not worth it, I would never do my routines, ever. But when I have the mentality that my routine still counts, even if I just do 1 step, or that I am going to miss days, and as long as I work on not missing 2 in a row, that's helpful. That helps me keep going. That helps me keep going on my routines when life gets in the way. That helps me stay consistent. Again, go back to the why. Go back to the reasoning behind your routine and use that as your inspiration to keep going, to do it again, even if you're going to miss steps or miss days, or likely both. Also, in addition to missing days or missing steps, your routine will get interrupted. It's kind of the crux of it. The first 2 things were kind of like your everyday. Like you will miss days, you will miss steps, but your routine will get interrupted. You are not going to have, there was something recently where what was I reading? And it was like, would really encourage you to have 3 weeks at home with no interruptions and I was like, who has 3 weeks at home with no interruptions, nothing like that throws them off of their schedule or routine? Like that does not exist. Whether it is planned, like a vacation or a visitor, or unplanned, like a sickness or a child sickness, a spouse's sickness, there will be times when you will stop your routine. And not just like skipping a day like I was talking about before, but actually like stopping your routine. I talked about this when someone asked last week about getting back to it after vacation. I typically give myself the same number of days to get back to it as I was off or gone. So if I'm out of town for a weekend, 2 to 3 days, it might take me 2 to 3 days to get back into my routines. And you might be thinking, well, like, Laken, then that's not till Wednesday. Yeah, that's what happens. My routines on Monday and Tuesday are not going to be perfect because I was out of town and I can't just like flip a switch and get back into routine, Laken. If I'm gone for a week, it might take me a whole week to get back into my routines. But the good news is that it's going to take you less time to get back into it than it did to establish it in the first place. And that is what you have to remind yourself is, yeah, it might take you a week to get back into it after vacation, but that's a lot less time than it took you to initially establish that routine. Last week, I said that I would rather you take the next 5 months to have a solid 5-step routine going into 2025, that you spent one step per month for the rest of the year. And then let's say you do that. You're like, okay, Laken, okay, I hear you. I understand. Starting 5 steps tomorrow is not helpful. I'm going to start 1 step every month for the rest of the year. And I'm going to go into the new year with a solid 5-step routine. And then you're out of town the last week of the year between Christmas and New Year's. You take a week off and you're like, I'm not due. I don't have any routines over that week. Here's the good news. It's not going to take you 5 months to get back into it. You didn't spend all that time, August through December, working on that routine to then need another 5 months to establish it at the beginning of the year. It might take you a week. I would give myself at least a week since I was gone for a week, maybe even 2, but it will be less than 5 months. And that mentality, that reminder in my head is how I keep going. That's how I keep consistent with routines. I know that I am going to miss. Where is that pop-up? I wish it had said I will miss days. I know I'm going to miss days. I know there's going to be parts of my routine, or there's going to be days of that I have my routine that I'm going to miss. But I am mentally choosing to skip them, or I'm out of town, or whatever it is. I will skip steps. There will be steps that I skip. I will start my morning routine and I will skip steps. And then my routine will get interrupted. Those 3 things are true facts. And as long as I know those things and I accept them and I don't shoot for perfection, I can keep going and I can keep working on my routines when life happens. Because that, in my opinion and experience, is the number one thing that gets us hung up with routines, is the need for perfection and the need for it to be the exact same thing every day, forever and ever and ever. And if you can't do that, well, then it's not even worth doing. And the truth is, you're never going to be able to do that. So as soon as I accepted that and I reminded myself of why is this routine important to me? It allows me to keep going and do it when I need to do it. So that is what I have planned. I didn't talk for as long as I thought I would. I'm going to come back and read the comments for a question. Okay. Jay, thank you for including your name because I know you didn't include your name or your pronouns last week. And so I was like, I'm just gonna not potentially mess it up. Finally tuning in on a live. Last week, Jay asked a question about her planner routine, and I gave my thoughts on that. I figured out the part that was tripping me up was the prioritization and limiting myself to changing just one or two things. So I decided to focus on catching up in the evening and setting an alarm to remind me, and it's working. I love it. Yes, give yourself credit for even starting. Partial credit counts. I don't even need outside influences to interrupt me. I do that all by myself. I do too. And I think it came down to accepting that I'm going to do that. Like I'm going to interrupt myself, and that's okay. And that happens. So those are all the things that I have. One quick thing I'm going to just add here at the end is that next week we are still doing routines a little bit. I originally had said just July, but when I mapped out my routine topics, I had 5, and that first week in July, I ended up being out of town. So next week will still be routines, even though we're jumping into August, and it's going to be my routines. I'm going to share my current routines with you, the ones that I do and what they look like, and I'll share some more like color around steps that I skip, steps that I change, etc. So look forward to that next week. Either plan to tune in live, same time, same place, or catch the replay. That is all I've got for you. So it is your turn now to ask questions, anything that you want to chat about. It can be about the topic. We can keep talking about routines for sure. But if you have any other question that you want to ask, you can ask whatever you want to ask. It can be about your individual goals or struggles. I promise. Even if you feel like it is just too specific to your life, it's okay. If you're here live, you get to ask that question. It could be about a topic. If you don't know how to phrase it into a question, you can put topic and just whatever the topic is, or whatever is on your mind. And just like Jay did here, if your name, your YouTube name is not the same as your YouTube handle, I would love for you to include that in your name, in your question. I mean, sorry, I was trying to read a question while answering that. Interested in your monthly routine. I don't know if I really have what I would call a monthly routine. The routines on my list to share, I'll tell you right now, are my morning routine, my evening routine, obviously, my communication routine, my weekly and monthly recurring tasks, which I did actually a whole live separately about, but I'm going to talk about that too. And then routines I'm thinking about starting. So I don't know if there's something, if you mean those monthly tasks, if that's what you're talking about, which I did a whole separate live on if you don't want to wait till next week. Or is there something else that I've mentioned that I didn't think about? Love this routine series. So helpful. I'm glad it has been. And I want to remind you that if you're here watching them live, maybe you're not working on routines or you're not you're not in the right headspace. I know it's the middle of summer. It's not necessarily the best time to be talking about routines, but this is always here for you, right? So if we get to going into Q4 and you're like, I want to start this routine in Q4, come back to this series. Watch the series again with that routine in mind. Watch the designing and implementing with that current routine that you're working on in mind. Tasks, that's what you meant. Okay. I will link that live in the description after this one is over, but it was a couple months ago. And if you go to my YouTube channel and you click on lives, you can see them. They're in chronological order, but you can see the title of it is recurring tasks. I don't know if it says weekly and monthly or not, but I know I use the word recurring. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more next week too, in the context of this series. But I did do that as its own whole one. That finally clicked for me this year, y'all. The number of years that I tried to make that work. And that is just such a good reminder that gosh, sometimes things take time. Sometimes there are things that you will try again and try this way and that way. And it might take years for it to finally just be like, no, this is the way that it works for me. Sometimes it just takes time. All right. What questions do you have? What's on your mind? What do you want to chat about? What are you struggling with? How are you feeling about August? Where are we at? What questions do you have? My coffee is almost gone. Sad face. Nobody? Come on. Someone's got a question. Task and routines also change with kids and their own routines. It's a struggle. So that maybe I did not talk about that somewhere. That may not be well documented in this series. So let's just talk about it now quickly. And that is changing routines. Your routines will change, period, the end. I think I did talk about it at the beginning in the very first week. Your routines will change, the end, based on how like your life evolves and changes. It could change based on the season. It could change based on your job. It can change based on you have children, then your children change. And regardless of where you're at in your life, your routines will likely change, shift, and change. That does not mean that you have failed. It does not mean that that routine does not work for you. It just means that you need to make a change. And it's obviously more difficult when you're involving other people. Like, let's say you have a routine that revolves around the fact that your spouse gets up and leaves for work at 6 a.m. Let's say your spouse is a teacher. They're out the door by 6 a.m. So your morning routine is kind of structured based on that. And then summer comes and they're home. And so now making the bed was the first step of your routine. And you can't do that as the first step because your spouse was still sleeping in said bed. That is a scenario where you just might need to change it. And it could be temporary change, like until your spouse goes back to work, or it could be a permanent change. Your spouse is now not going to be a teacher anymore, and they're going to shift into a different job. They're now working from home. And so that changes all that together. Or again, yes, you have kids and their routines change. I very much learned that over the last, y'all, as of tomorrow, 11 months that I've had a tiny human. And her life and routines have absolutely changed over the last 11 months. And there are times that I have had to shift and change my own needs or my own, like, where and when I do my steps, my routines based on her. You know, it went from like her sleep schedule to like, oh, okay, now we have this sleep schedule, but she isn't mobile. And now I can't get her to sit still. And so that changes things altogether. And it's definitely a struggle, but it's also, again, kind of going back to maybe it's kind of the overarching theme here is accepting that that's the situation and that it's knowing it as a fact and not so much a being surprised when it happens, right? When I'm telling you like that, letting go of the perfection and not being surprised when I don't do it or I skip steps or whatever, that's okay. The same thing happens. When something changes about Lila's schedule and now I have to shift my routines, like that's just what happens. And it's time to change it. And being okay with needing that flexibility, I think is also key to sticking with your routines. Yes. And remember to be flexible with your routines. If you usually start your AM routine at 8, but one day you can't start till 10, it's still your AM routine. Absolutely. The names are just kind of semantics. Do you do a brain dump each month? No, I typically do a brain dump, if we can call it that, each week. I make a massive to-do list each week. And actually, this has been really working for me. I'm not going to show you this week's because there's some private stuff on there. But I've been using this layout from Erin Condren. And I have been putting one column is work and one column is personal. And then the top row is ASAP. So these are like the things that need to happen like now, like as soon as possible. This line section is this week. So these are the things that I either need to or would like to get to this week. I don't always get to all these things, but I try. And then this section is eventually, and that kind of in my mind is more the like brain dump side of it. That has been working for me. What I will say is sometimes then I get overwhelmed by the eventually, like being able to see that. So what I'm thinking I might do is start putting, because then I have this sitting on my desk like this. And I don't need to see the eventually. The eventually is really just to get it out of my head. And the likelihood that I get to it this week is pretty slim. So what I might start doing is writing the eventually on the back, and because then I can't see it, but there's a place to store it. And then on this side, doing like tier one, just tier one, tier two, tier three. And so like tier one is still going to be ASAP. Like this needs to get prioritized first. Tier two would be like not ASAP, but needs to happen this week. Like, for example, one of my things this week is getting a birthday gift in the mail for a birthday that's on Saturday. It's not in the mail yet. So that one may not arrive in time for his birthday. But if it gets there by Monday, I'm going to call it a win. And so that would be like not necessarily ASAP, but like this week. And then this would be like a nice to do this week. It's not that different, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. But I do it more on a weekly basis than a monthly basis. You make your own coffee. I buy the cold brew concentrate from Trader Joe's. So my typical recipe is take whatever container I'm using, fill to the top with ice, halfway with the concentrate, which by the way, the concentrate is very strong. So somebody, who is it that I like saw somewhere they were talking about, and they were like, oh, it's too bitter, it's too strong, but they were trying to use it like actual cold brew. If you read the instructions, it says to actually do a 2-to-1 ratio of something with the coffee. So like whether you use water or milk or cream or something. Obviously I don't think you would probably want to do like a 2-to-1 of straight cream. That would be very heavy, but regardless is that you need to likely water it down. I like my coffee strong. So I do half of the cold brew concentrate, then half of that ish with water. And then the rest of it with half and half. And that's my typical recipe. So, yum. It's actually funny because when people come to visit from out of town, y'all, we don't have like a regular coffee maker in our house. I'm like, I have 3 options of coffee for you, but none of them are just like a coffee maker. I have cold brew in the fridge. I have an espresso machine, if you'd like a latte. And I have, or just espresso, which you could add water and make an Americano. It's basically coffee. Or I have the Four Sigmatic instant mushroom coffee. I'm like, those are my coffee choices. None of them are just like coffee. Both people working from home makes it a lot harder to keep a consistent routine, I think, too, especially in the summer without a normal school routine. My husband's schedule is fairly flexible, and mine is completely reliant on me as self-employed. When you're not a great self-starter and get easily distracted, it's hard. I think it depends on the people. I think it, like for me, with the exception of the example I gave, which is clearly from personal experience, which is making the bed, the rest of my routine has nothing to do with my husband. I don't care what time he gets up. I don't care what time he starts he works from home, and he also works for himself. And I don't care about none of that impacts my morning routine. My daughter impacts because I am on Lila duty in the mornings. And that is, so her schedule and situation does impact my morning routine. But with the exception of the fact that I can't make the bed until he is out of it, I don't like anything. What time he wakes up does not impact me. And that's just how it works for us. But I can understand that for some people, depending on the situation, that may not be the case. It may be harder. We obviously don't have a school routine yet, so that doesn't impact us either. But I think if you find that your routines are being impacted by somebody else being in your house, that's like of an age that you can have a conversation with them about it, then that just might be what needs to happen, is that you have a conversation about it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think I guess it impacts my evening routine a lot more than my morning, because sometimes he gets off at 4 and sometimes he doesn't get off until late. Now that is fair. My evening routine, yeah, I guess I just read routine. Yes, my evening routine definitely can be impacted by him. And so, that would definitely, like, that is conversations that we had to make sure that we have like a plan for the evening. And we share the same office space too. Oh yeah, that would definitely make it difficult. That would definitely make things different for sure. But I think it's just, so then it comes down to a conversation, right? Of like, what's important to you in terms of consistency? And is it like there's a time cutoff? Or is there a, like, some sort of other trigger that's like, okay, this is when we get to do this thing, or I get to be in the office, or, whatever it is, um, and what that looks like. And it may take some trial and error, like figuring that out to figure out what works for you guys. But yeah, that would be harder. My Keurig died. Oh no. So I switched to instant, and that has worked fine for me. I actually prefer that if I'm having my coffee black, because I can adjust the strength. Yeah, that's true. With the instant, you can adjust how strong you want it. I have a feeling once the baby comes, I'm going to be asking him to get off the computer a lot earlier. That's funny. And probably fair. Yeah. I think, I'm trying to figure out how to share this without. No, never mind. Sorry, that was really annoying and vague, but like, I don't want to share that. We're going to be in River North for 6 weeks starting tomorrow. Any good new restaurants that you would recommend? In that specific neighborhood, Linda, or just like in general? Because we don't necessarily go down to River North a lot, if I'm being totally honest. That's like tourist zone. So we haven't been down there in a while. So I don't know of any new restaurants in River North. There is a place that we went recently down there that we liked. I don't think it's new to us, but now I can't remember what it's called. Happy to get on the CTA to get anywhere. Okay, there's a place up here in Lincoln Park. I don't live in Lincoln Park. My mom does, but it's in Lincoln Park. It's like halfway between me and my mom. That's called Briny Swine. I'm going to post it in the comments. I know that sounds funny. But it's like I think that's how it's spelled. Maybe there's an E in Briny now that I'm looking at that typed out. It's like barbecue, but also oysters. And I think it's delicious. And I also, though, now rate restaurants based on how big they are, and do they have a high chair, and do they have space for me to park my stroller? And this one has all of those things. So that also helps for liking this restaurant. I'm trying to think. Where else we've been lately? Well, my brain is not functioning. There's another neighborhood place up here called Drew's that has a great happy hour, like a good deal if you're looking for a happy hour. This is definitely the move, though. Like, these 6 weeks in Chicago are beautiful. Although it is also going to be kind of chaotic. We have something like every weekend. This weekend is Lolla. The next weekend is the Air and Water Show. And then the next week is the Democratic National Convention. So it's going to be kind of chaotic here for a bit. I just want to like stay in my house, in my neighborhood bubble, and like not escape it. What else is on your mind? What other questions do you have? Everybody's super quiet today. Anything else? You're welcome. I'll see if I can think of anything more, Linda, if you want to ask me again. Or Maybe I'll ask my sister. My sister's the restaurant expert, y'all. I also feel like, and I know I've said this before, and you asked neighborhood, but then you were like anywhere. It also, I feel like if in general with recommendations, if you're like what just popped into my head is an Italian place, and it's like, but I don't know if you like Italian, but it's like when people ask for specific recommendations, like I'm looking for coffee or ice cream or Italian or you know sushi or whatever it is, it's easier for me to think of examples when I'm just like any neighborhood, any restaurant. I'm like, whoa, I don't even I almost feel like my brain is in overload. Like trying to pull all that information is tough. I was trying to just like go based on recency, like where have we been recently? Um, but some of the places we've been recently are like places that have been here for forever. It's not new at all. I actually feel like we've gotten into a little bit of a rut going to the same places in our neighborhood. And not that we can't get to other neighborhoods because we absolutely can. But if we're just going out to dinner, I'm like, are we really going to make the effort to like go to another neighborhood? Or are we just going to like, my mom and I finally did it one day for lunch. Like we wanted, it was like a beautiful day. It was a Friday. And I typically try not to work Fridays. As long as I got like what I needed to get done for the week done, I try not to work Fridays. And it was a beautiful day, but it wasn't like hot, like let's go get in the pool kind of hot. It was you want to be sitting outside, not in water hot, if that makes sense. And so I was like, let's drive to a new neighborhood and walk around and explore that neighborhood and go to lunch in that neighborhood. And like, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. The restaurant we went to was just okay. I probably wouldn't recommend it, but like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like out of this world. Looking for fun happy hour or quaint date night locations. I'm laughing because really, like I said, we've prioritized restaurants based on size and high chair and stroller parking, which none of those things are quaint date night locations. And when we do go on dates, they're almost always down in the theater district because if we do have a scheduled date night, it's almost always around a show. And the show, like the restaurant options down there are not terrible, but they're not the best. So, but what I will say for both of these things, oh my gosh, what is it called? Hold on. I'm going to find it. It's it has a great happy hour. And I took my mom. Nope. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Hold on. I'm going to find it. Okay. I can't find it. And now it's going to drive me. I feel bad because I just was like distracting. I was not talking to you for a minute to look at the answer. Linda, send me a message on Instagram and I'll find the answer for you. But there was a like Argentinian Spanish type place. I don't know exactly what cuisine it is, but in that realm, that had a great happy hour. Great. Like we got the happy hour food and we were full and done. And it was great. So how do you keep track of routines that spread over weeks or months? For example, car maintenance. I have a tracker of the last time I did things and I use Post-its, but I'm not in love with that. So I don't really have anything like this, I feel like, because I don't have a car. So I don't have things that spread over multiple months and I don't own a house. So I don't have things that need to be done every so often. What I will say, and what I talked about in that weekly and monthly recurring tasks is I use my notes app on my phone now for my routines. And I have them in there in like checklist format. And then I also include the date that I last did it. And then I also put it in my Google Cal. And so I can move it around and it kind of reminds me there. So having it in both places kind of like holds me accountable to seeing it in both places. Like, so for example, usually the last week of the month, I wash my makeup brushes, and that's not multiple months, but it's once a month. And before you come at me, I have 2 sets of brushes. So I use it. I do I wash all the brushes once a month and I swap them out halfway through the month. So I'm only using one set for 2 weeks, and I don't do my makeup every day. So before you're like, that's not enough, because I've gotten that before. My brushes probably get used, call it 7 to 8 times before they get washed. Okay. Or switched. So I will have it in my Google Cal to wash makeup brushes. And then I will also have it in like my notes app under my monthly section, monthly tasks, under week 4, it says makeup brushes. And then I will have the date that I last did it so that I can kind of reference that to be like, okay, are you being ridiculous? Because I try to do it in week 4, but if I don't get to it, then is it worth doing the next week? And then sometimes, I'm being totally honest, and I know this is harder to do with car maintenance because like if you don't do something that could be detrimental, sometimes I just miss it. Like sometimes I just skip it and I'm like, I'll get to it next month. And like, it's not going to be perfect. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. You're going to miss steps. It's not going to be perfect. And that's okay. It's better than not doing it. And again, I know that's easier said than done for routines that are not, your car's going to break down, if that makes sense. Sorry, the trash man is being loud. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I had something that was multiple months. Well, I've said this before. I have 2 things that I do on a quarterly basis. I swap out our toothbrush heads and our loofahs. That's like the one thing I do. And again, I have that in my Google Cal just on the 1st of the new quarter. And I only have it there because it's just 2 things. And that is worth it. Like if I don't do it that day, I'll get to it at some point in the next week or 2. That's better than waiting a whole another quarter. House maintenance is the other thing I was thinking of. I've dabbled in Google Cal. Maybe I could try that. And no judgment. Washing makeup brushes isn't even on my last time list. I wasn't even necessarily thinking you, Jay. I know that I have gotten that comment before where people have been like, you have to wash your makeup brushes more often than that. And like, yeah, sure. In an ideal world, maybe you do, but like, it is what it is. I think this might be outdated, but iPhone reminders can notify things on a set date time. I don't think that's outdated at all. I do feel like sometimes I'm in this tug of war with myself of like spending time on my phone, but then using my phone as a helpful reminder. Can you schedule the next one when you do the current one? For car maintenance, I am bad about this, but for my dentist appointments, that's a great suggestion. I try to do this for doctor's appointments too. Like when I'm there, I schedule the next one so that it's already done. This works for things that are scheduled, right? Like things that you're making an appointment for. This may not be as easy for like things that you need to do, but my guess is you're saying when you say you're using Post-its, it's like in your planner Post-its, and that's what I use my Google Cal for. But I also already had my Google Cal as a routine before I started adding these things into it. I just recently started making a home maintenance list, and I told myself to make the frequency of the tasks as far apart as reasonable because otherwise I'm not going to get to everything. Absolutely. And I've also realized this with cleaning as well. Sure, in an ideal world, and before someone comes at me, like I'm cleaning my bathroom every single week. Sure, that would be great. But what works now is we have 3 bathrooms in our house, and I'm doing 1 bathroom a week. Not all 3. I'm doing 1, which means the bathrooms are on a 3-week rotation. And you know what? That's better than it not happening at all, ever. So spreading, like if you get consistent with some routine, maybe then you can add on and condense it a little bit and make it less, more less far apart, more frequent. But do what is reasonable now. That's a great reminder. Yes, that's a great idea. And I do this, but then I forget until the week before or whenever the reminder is, and it feels chaotic. I think make it when it makes sense for you. Like, have it, like, try not to, I'm trying to say how to phrase this. Like, if you need a day in advance, have it be a day in advance. If you need a week in advance, a week. If you need 2 weeks to make that appointment, have it 2 weeks out. You know what I mean? Like, try not to put pressure on yourself that's unnecessary. And don't feel bad about how much lead time you individually need to get that thing in your calendar, in your schedule. If your schedule, let's say you get your work schedule 2 weeks out, for somebody who's on like a some sort of shift schedule, then that's when that reminder needs to be, is when, as soon as you get your work schedule. Whereas somebody else could maybe do it a little bit like on a less time frame. I don't know if that made any sense. I know with the Google Cal, there are different frequencies of reminders. Would it help to set one halfway in between? That's also a good suggestion. I used to try to take the laundry from the bedrooms downstairs every morning before throwing a load in, but I just don't have the energy for that anymore. So I changed it to once a week. Yes, exactly. And once a week is better than never. I would love to see your list. As a somewhat new homeowner, I'm a little unsure how often some things need to be done. I think this is one of those things that something is better than nothing. Obviously, not a homeowner or car owner, so I don't have the best suggestions from personal experience, but this is one of those kinds of goals or steps where I would Google. And when you do that, you're going to find a million answers, a million things. Something is going to tell you to clean your filters once a month. Another thing is going to say once a year, probably somewhere in the middle. This is coming from, I know that maintenance comes and does ours twice a year. Like that, it's something like that. What my suggestion would be for something like this, you're welcome to Google and use those answers, is find somebody that you do trust. Like, in full disclosure, if I was making this list, I would call my dad. And my dad, who has owned a home for 25 years, more than that. How old am I? 30 years. He's owned a home, not the same home, but a home. And I would be like, what are the things? What are the things that I need to do? And how often do I need to do them? And if that feels reasonable, then maybe I would do that. Maybe I would spread them out a little bit more because I don't have the capacity to do all, who knows? Or I, put some on my husband's plate, whatever, we would split up. But I would ask somebody that I trust, that I knew would give me answers, somebody who has done it themselves for a set amount of time. Oh, you mean the automated reminders that the company sends? Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. I feel like some of them are like when I was doing physical therapy, I feel like I would get a reminder like every day, the whole week leading up to it. And it would be like both email and text. And I'm like, I have it. It's in my calendar. Like, I will be there. Oh my gosh. I also own a historic home. So more high maintenance than most people's homes. That's the other thing about home management, is it very much differs based on how old your house is, where you live. Like, what is your I know home foundations are the same, but like whether you live in a like softer ground place or a harder ground place can impact things. Whether you have gas or electric, like, you know what I mean? There's like a bazillion different factors. Like, I can just imagine the like decision tree of like home maintenance is going to depend on so many different factors. So it's hard to just like Google this and find the answer for you too. It's a good point. And I also think some of these things, unfortunately, you might have to learn by the hard way. Like, to the extent that you can, you get on top of it and you do it. Like, you do the things. And then there might be a time, and I feel like this happens with us, like our bodies as well, is like we learn like, oh, this happened, and now I have to add in this new maintenance thing that I wasn't doing before. So I just do what I want or what I pay for because some things I simply can't do myself. I am not getting on a ladder for anything. I think that makes sense. Everybody has their own things. We have a 70-year-old boiler. Holy moly. Y'all, you want a secret? I don't think this is a secret because I think I've said this before. I have no desire to own a home. Like, I understand the math behind renting versus owning. Okay, I get it. Renting is not good for my equity building and all of that, all of those things. Okay, I get it. I don't want to deal with these things. I don't want to own a home. We had an issue the other day with the toilet. I love that I was able to call maintenance and the guy was there in like 2 hours, fixed my toilet and left. Done. Like, it just, it's so nice. It's so nice. Pros and cons of all the things. All right. I don't either. Oh my God, I'm glad it's not just me. I don't want to. My landlord and her team are the best. Exactly. Yes, I love owning a home, but it can be so chaotic. Either nothing is happening or it's all falling apart, right? And somehow I feel like that all falling apart would come at like the most inopportune time. Like, there's a newborn or something, like it's just something chaotic. So many pros and cons. I understand why you do it. And I also respect our current decision to not do. All right. On that note, y'all, my coffee is gone. Let's wrap it up with our final question. What is the one thing you're going to do this week to make progress on your goals? What is the one small step that you're going to take this week to make progress? I had something else typed in here, but I'm not even going to pop that up. I'm going to tell you it's like figuring out my goals and deciding what I'm going to do for August and whether I'm going to like wipe the slate clean and try something else or just like rewrite it and add a couple new things in that I want to do. We'll see. We'll see. But I want to hear about the what your things. It does come at the worst every time. That's how I feel. I owned a home for 8 years and decided it wasn't for me for your life situation. Yeah, it's tough. It's enough for me to be like, screw equity, let me rent. Sort of kidding. I feel you on that. Set your August goals. You finally got your 2024, 2025 goal set. I love that. Bought a stepper and a walking pad. So exercise while reading and playing video games. I love that. Setting August goals. Since you're away from home for 6 weeks, sticking to your routines for personal and work. Love it. Set up a weekly reset routine. Love hearing about all your small steps. Y'all know it does not take a big step to make progress. Small progress is still progress. And I love hearing about all of your wins. That is going to be it for us this week. Join me next week for, I feel like a TV show. Next week on Lattes with Laken, I'm going to share all my routines with you and a couple that I am thinking of implementing potentially. But that's going to be it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, please click that subscribe button. I upload new videos every week, focus on helping you achieve your goals. Thanks so much for hanging out.